Good evening, good morning. Welcome to week 5 of PSSL 6240 here at George Washington University in the Safety and Security Leadership Program. So halfway through the program, or halfway through your first class, so congratulations, and I look forward to the same level of effort and focus that we see from here on in. So announcements, Adobe Connect session is this Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will send out a new link. For those of you who weren't there last time, all you have to do is click on the link and enter the room, and you will see the Adobe, you'll see the presentation. So week 2 or group 2 is in the chute for this presentation. So I look forward to their briefing. Keep it to about 20 to 25 minutes or so, and that should give some time for questions. I also want to do for the Adobe Connect sessions for the third one, not this coming Thursday, but the one 2 weeks from Thursday, we're going to have a presentation for 20-25 minutes on the Boston Marathon attack and the Intel failures. And I also want to do a job talk about careers, getting a job in the federal government, getting a job in the intelligence community, working in the intelligence community, and things that I think would enhance your professional pedigree. So I want to take about 30 minutes to do that as well. So we'll take the full hour for Adobe Connect session number 3. And what I'll also do is just if you have questions about careers in the federal government, please send them to me beforehand so I can research them and have an answer for you at the actual session. The second announcement, current events. Again, a lot is going on in the world. Whether it's the water crisis in Michigan, the Zika virus that seems to be spreading into North America, the snowstorms, the massive snowstorms that we've had on the East Coast. And something that always jump out at me, and it's something that should jump out at you as well, is it's not necessarily how smart you are. It's how well you can distill critical information to a policymaker. And what I mean by that is when the governor of Virginia is talking about the Zika virus, he's not an epidemiologist. He's going to go to his medical professionals and he's going to ask them the straight up answer. And he's not going to want medical mumbo jumbo. He's going to want the most relevant information that he can give to the public. The governor of Michigan is not a civil engineer, but he wants to know from his engineering folks, okay, what happened and how to make sure that the water crisis in Flint doesn't happen again. And I hope every governor in the United States is asking their public health or their civil engineer folks, hey, how to make sure that something like what happened in Michigan didn't happen. And again, the bottom line is it's not how smart you are, it's how well you can distill the information to a very simple and relevant form. And that's what kind of this course and a lot of these assignments that I'm handing out is the purpose. Again, real world, for paper 2, the governor is not if you work for a governor, he's not going to be an expert on WMD. He's going to turn to somebody like you and say, hey, is this a threat? Is this relevant? Yes or no? And explain it in words that I can explain to the public. That's something, again, to keep in the back of your mind when we're going through these assignments, and keep in the back of your mind when you see a crisis on TV. Whether it's, again, the mayor of D.C. trying to explain snow plowing, or the governor of Texas trying to explain Ebola in his state. Somebody like you has hopefully explained it to him in very distilled, simple terms that he or she can take to the public. So, again, something to keep in mind when you're from here on in. So, paper 1. Everyone needs work. This usually happens for the first paper. Most of you haven't been in school in a while. Most of you, this is your first class. So, writing in an academic environment is challenging. So, don't take it personally if I wrote some pretty pointed observations in your assignments. But even if you did get a decent grade, everyone needs work. At the very least, show your paper to a friend or your family or significant other before you hand it in, just to at least eliminate the proofreading issues. More importantly, you want that person to understand what you're saying. So everyone needs work. The biggest problem was far, far, far too much background. I know what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I know what happened at Fort Hood. I know the background of Hezbollah and every organization that was mentioned in this paper. Don't give me a history lesson. Don't give me the background. Get to the point, okay? And again, this paper would have, if you're going to talk history, pin your arguments to those analytical points. So don't start your paper, again, for the people who did the Fort Hood shooting, don't start your paper with a history of Nidal Hasan. Don't talk about the paper about the history of Anwar al-Awlaki, who was the person that Hasan was in communications with. Talk about the point first. So if your point is that Nidal Hasan, because he had shown tendency towards radicalization, and that proves that this is a terrorist act, or this furthers that argument, start off by saying that Hasan's, number one, Hasan's turn towards radicalization is indicative of a terrorist organization. Then talk about his radical past, or his shift towards radicalization in his past couple of weeks before he conducted the Fort Hood shooting. If you're going to say Anwar al-Awlaki, or Hasan's connection to Anwar al-Awlaki is indicative of terrorism because he was organizing with somebody else, don't give me a history of it. Say, point one, point two, Hasan's interaction with Anwar al-Awlaki proves that this is terrorism, or should classify this as terrorism. Then talk about the 38 emails he sent between him and al-Awlaki. Don't start off with a history of Anwar al-Awlaki or his bio. That really, really takes away from your writing. And again, some of you, if you did the atom bomb, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I don't need to know, I already know this, but I don't need to know the specifics of how a B-29 drops an atom bomb. That's, right there and then you've lost me as your reader. Get to the point quickly. Do not give me background. And I hate to say this, but I think some of you gave background to fill the paper up. And as I said in the first day of class, if you're trying to fill your paper up with words, you have not done your job, your research and your prep work. And that's kind of, I got the impression from a few of you that you're just trying to get to the 1,800 words and you put in extraneous background. Get to the point. That's I can't emphasize that enough, and that's more important in this upcoming paper. Passive voice. That's always been a problem. The first sentence here, the ball was bounced by the boy. That is a passive voice. That means the ball is the direct object, was bounced is the verb, by the boy is the subject. Again, I hate to sound like you're junior high English teacher, but the best sentences are subject, verb, direct object. Those are what makes your sentences more clear, makes your writing a lot more succinct and concise. So again, look for passive voice. Everyone had it in their papers. Proofread. Again, this is graduate degree, graduate level stuff. I should not be finding grammar errors in spelling and grammar. Show it to somebody else. You can't proofread your own work. Show it to somebody else, and make sure that it's at least those standards are met. So those are the issues with the paper. Again, it's a little bit of a esoteric topic, maybe require a little bit more research. So this is probably the most difficult paper to write. But again, it's a good one to start off with so I can critique your writing. And if you have questions on the grade or questions on the paper, please come to the Adobe Connect session and we can talk more in detail. So week 4 review, terrorist adaptations. And one thing I didn't say this specifically, but I wanted you to kind of allude to it, is based on the adaptation cycles that you saw in those groups and what you read from what your classmates write, will ISIS be successful? Will it go down the path of historical irrelevance? It could go either way or not. As we saw in lecture 3, that finance piece, and some of you alluded to it, That steady flow of money is one of those key factors that makes a terrorist organization successful. Hezbollah, and some of you alluded to this here, Hezbollah has always had a state sponsor giving it millions of dollars, so they never had to fundraise or do anything that was that could make the terrorist organization become a criminal element. There was always money there. ISIS had money to start with, but now is falling on economic hard times. And there was a report a couple of days ago about how they had to cut the salaries of ISIS fighters by 50%. And there was a humorous Daily Show clip, and I'll send that out. But they had to cut the salary, and that original money that they captured in 2014 is kind of going out of style, or being run out, I should say. So under those circumstances, will ISIS be successful? And again, I'll let you decide. And then what were the factors that led to success? And I talked about that cycle that you go through, and when you hit that crossroads where you go into a criminal, violent extremist or into a more successful political organization. And again, Hezbollah had the money and it had the political backing. Hamas, they were successful again because they were able to turn their violence into a social services. They provided social services to the people of Gaza when the Palestinian Authority was corrupt. Those were factors that led to success. And again, I just wanted, when you're looking at ISIS or looking at current days, think about that. Again, why certain groups adapt and others do not. And then the second part was WMD terrorism. Dirty War, again, great flick, great movie. I think it should inspire you to be in this program, inspire you to do whatever your day job is, whether it's intelligence or law enforcement or first line response. That when I saw that movie, it really kind of hit home what I do on a day-to-day basis. What you also see is that the Homeland Security rep, for lack of a better term, the older woman, testifying before Parliament, and whether it's Parliament or Congress, they love to play contradictions, gotcha questions in Congress. And some of you might be testifying before Congress, some of you might be prepping others to testify before Congress. And I think that was a good illustration of oftentimes what Congress or Parliament is trying to do to you if you're a senior executive. I'd also add that the type of weapon that's used in Dirty War is enriched uranium, weaponized uranium. It's very difficult to get. They don't talk about how they actually acquired the weapon. That's the gamma dirty bomb. The more likely scenario is an alpha or beta, which is commercially available industrial radiation, and that can not necessarily cause casualties, but cause panic. And that's probably a more likely scenario than you had the hundreds or thousands of people dying in that movie. Om Shinrikyo case study. Again, I thought that article was excellent, and how it talks about Om Shinrikyo and their decision process and their desire to conduct WMD and why they chose chemical over biological and how they scaled chemical and the difficulties in disseminating WMD. And I thought the article coupled with the movie gave you a very good example of Om Shinrikyo, of why not every terrorist organization, particularly Al-Qaeda, can do what Om Shinrikyo did. And finally, the Rajneeshi case study. I didn't have any readings on it, but I think that's just an interesting case study on it's not always terrorists that conduct attacks. It's sometimes free love, political groups, for lack of a better term, or cults that can have a largest effect. So that kind of wraps up week 4, and I just want you to make sure you have the lessons from week 4 when we take it into the paper. So paper 2, again, it's due a week from Sunday, 1,200 to 1,500 words max. I am going to be 1,500 words. that's going to be the max. Don't hand me an essay that has 1,550 words. 1,500 words in the body, so it doesn't include the title page or the bibliography or anything like that. And the reason I say 1,500 words is because I want you to write with concision. And I'll say this, just like I said for the first paper, you should have more words when you do your drafts of your papers than 1,500. The key is to try and cut what you don't think is as important. Again, designed to be concise. Limited research. I don't expect you, again, you have the 3 scenarios. I don't expect you to go spend weeks or days in the library trying to become experts on all these. In fact, you could probably get an answer you could probably do your research in a few Google searches. Again, I don't look at it's not meant to be an in-depth research project. And again, you have the 3 scenarios, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and ricin, and you got to think you're in the shoes of someone in 2011 or 2010, 2011 when that incident happened, when that article was released. Syria and sarin, that article is in 2013, and again, put yourself in the shoes of being in 2013, not the situation now after the sarin has been dissipated. And then ISIS, it's the laptop of doom. There are other things on the laptop of doom that I don't think really reach the open sources, but that article talks about ISIS and plague and their desire to use plague as a delivery system, or as a WMD. Is it a threat? Why or why not? And you just imagine that you work for a governor or you work for a senior official, and they come up to you, they read those articles, they come to you and say, do I need to be worried about this? Yes or no, why or why not? And that's what happens in the real world. Here you have a week to do your paper. In the real world, someone will tell you at 10 o'clock, write me this paper by close of business today. And so he or she can go in front of the press and go in front of the public and go into detail on what you're trying to say. And then the 3 key areas are there: production, transportation, and dissemination. And again, that's something that are either hurdles or facilitators for conducting the potential WMD attack. So again, this is a short, concise paper. I don't see it taking too long for you to do. And again, and the presentation should also encompass this. So preview of week 5, this is counterterrorism policy, both in the U.S. and then we look abroad. The readings, the MONAR, the EU counterterrorism analysis paper, great paper, prescient. Think of, it was written obviously before the Paris attacks, but think of the Paris attacks and the ability of the EU to stop terrorism when you're reading that paper. The Van Evera paper, it's a little bit preachy. It was written about 2006, and it was a very, let's just say it's very critical of our counterterrorism efforts at 2006. It's a little old, but it's definitely a good read. The Hoffman is an analysis of the Obama counterterrorism policy in 2009. So when you're reading that, read it with a careful eye and look, okay, did we achieve those counterterrorism policies 7 years later? Or is there a difference in policies? Or did we have to adjust policy? Or were those policies effective? And then the Zakaria article, I think, is great. It's a little dated. It's pre-ISIS, written in 2010, but it argues, again, in 2010-11, were we winning the global war on terror? And again, it's a thought piece. And then the discussions, again, U.S. counterterrorism strategy, Israeli counterterrorism strategy. The Gora article is a key part of the Gora lecture. That's the lecture from the counterterrorism conference that's, again, linked in. He talks about Israeli counterterrorism. He's an Israeli counterterrorism official. And he goes into detail, and I talk about it in the lecture. And, again, ask why Israel is successful, or what are the elements that make Israel successful? Can they be replicated in the United States? So those are the discussions, and there's only one lecture for this week. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I will see you, for those of you at the Adobe Connect session, I'll see you on Thursday.